USS Albacore, SS-218, topped off her fuel at Midway Island on 28 October 1944 before heading out on her 11th patrol of the war. The submarine was never heard from again and was presumed to be lost with all 60 men on 21 December 1944. Japanese records indicate she struck a mine off the shore of Hokkaido, which was witnessed by a patrol boat. During her career, Albacore set the record for most tonnage ever sunk by a single submarine, and most combat ships sunk at 13. Her biggest prize included Japanese aircraft carrier Tahoe during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. USS Amberjack, SS-219, was on her third patrol of the war near the traffic routes of the Rabaul-Shortland Sea area when she made a final radio transmission on 14 February 1943, reporting she had picked up an enemy aviator and had been forced down by two tailing destroyers. Amberjack was never heard from again, as all sent messages to the sub went unanswered and she never returned to base. The sub and her 60 crew were presumed lost on 22 March 1943. After the war, captured Japanese records show on 16 February 1943, Japanese torpedo boat Hyodori and a subchaser dropped depth charges on a submarine approximately 60 miles south of Rabaul. Wreckage and an oil slick developed, and the Japanese assumed the vessel had been destroyed. These ships may have sunk the submarine USS Grampus, SS-207, which also went missing in the same area. However, most evidence points to the 16 February sinking as the Amberjack. USS Bonefish, SS-223, was on her 8th patrol of the war in the Sea of Japan, off the western coast of Honshu, conducting offensive operations in June 1945. On the 16th, Bonefish reported having sunk a 6,800-ton cargo ship, and 2 days later was given permission to conduct a daytime patrol near Toyama Bay. Neither the submarine nor any of her crew were ever seen again. The sub failed to make the scheduled rendezvous with USS Tunney and was officially declared lost on July 30, 1945. Post-war examination determined that Bonefish was most likely sunk with all hands on June 18 near Toyama Wan after making a successful torpedo attack on a Japanese cargo ship. Escorting vessels attacked the American submarine with depth charges until wood chips and oil came to the surface. USS Corvina, SS-226, left Pearl Harbor on her maiden voyage on 4 November 1943, stopped at Johnson Island on the 6th to off her fuel tanks, then proceeded to Truk for her first combat patrol. The submarine was never seen or heard from again by friendly forces. It is believed that Corvina was sunk with all 82 of her crew by Japanese submarine I-176, who reported sinking an American sub southwest of Truk on 16 November. If being the case, Corvina was the only U.S. sub sunk by another enemy submarine during the Second World War. USS Darter, SS-227, was conducting her 4th patrol of the war near Palawan on 23 October 1944, when just after midnight, a huge fleet of Japanese battleships and cruisers appeared on the submarine's radar. In the opening attack of the famous Battle of Leyte Gulf, Darter attacked and sunk the heavy cruiser Atago with 4 torpedoes, which turned out to be Admiral Kurita's flagship of the center force. The American submarine also hit and seriously damaged Takao. Darter pursued the damaged cruiser until at 5 on 24 October when the submarine ran aground on Bombay Shoal. All attempts to dislodge the boat failed, and her crew was taken off by accompanying submarine Dace without casualties. The Darter refused to die after a failed scuttling, and was abandoned to the elements after it was determined she would be of no value to the enemy. The submarine's wreck was broken up by naval bombing practice, and still sits where she ran aground in 1944, albeit in decaying ruins. USS Herring, SS-233, went out from Midway Island for her 8th patrol of the war on 21 May 1944, then 10 days later made rendezvous with USS Barb, SS-220, before heading off to the Kuril Islands. The submarine was never heard from again. Post-war analysis of Japanese records conclude that Herring had sunk 2 ships on 31 May near Midway Island, and on the morning of 1 June, she sunk 2 additional Japanese cargo ships which were anchored near the island. Shore batteries spotted the surface submarine and were able to hit Herring numerous times with shell fire. The American submarine disappeared beneath the sea, leaving behind bubbles and an oil slick which stretched for over 15 miles. All 60 of her men were lost. The submarine's wreck was discovered in 2016 near Midway Island. USS Trigger, SS-237, was on her 12th patrol of the war in the East China Sea hunting cargo ships in March 1945. The submarine reported attacking a convoy on 20 March 120 miles northeast of Okinawa, close to an area which had been restricted to U.S. subs due to its heavy presence of mines. Trigger was ordered to join a wolf pack of nearby subs on the 26th, which the submarine never acknowledged. Trigger transmitted a routine weather report that same day, but was never seen or heard from again. By 1 May 1945, the submarine and her crew of 60 men were considered lost. Post-war records indicate Japanese anti-submarine planes and escort vessels attacked an American sub in the area on 28 March until a large oil slick appeared. USS Wahoo, SS-238, left Midway Island on 13 September for her 7th patrol of the war, heading for the Sea of Japan to hunt cargo ships. The famous and decorated submarine was never seen or heard from again. Japanese radio reported on 11 October 1943, an American submarine was passing through Albacore Strait and came under a sustained attack by the submarine chasers CH-15 and CH-43, assisted by 3 E-13A1 Jakes, for several hours until oil and debris came to the surface. Wahoo had been the only U.S. submarine operating in the area at the time. In 2006, the Wahoo was found by a team of divers resting in 200 feet of water near the Albacore Strait. USS Dorado, SS-248, was a newly commissioned submarine which had just completed sea trials and left Connecticut on 6 October 1943 en route to Panama to begin her service in the war. The submarine was never seen or heard from again, and the cause of her loss has never conclusively been determined. It is possible the submarine was sunk by a patrolling American anti-submarine plane, but the crew of plane reported the submarine they attacked had structural features which were certainly only of German design and was too far off course from where Dorado was scheduled to operate. The fate of Dorado remains unsolved. USS Flyer, SS-250, was on her 2nd patrol of the war, transiting on the surface through the Balabac Strait the night of 12 August 1944, when at 22:00 the submarine struck a naval mine. The sub quickly sank in less than a minute, but 15 men were able to escape the stricken boat. 8 men were able to make their way ashore on Bayan Island after more than 17 hours in the water, where the crew members made contact with Filipino guerrillas. The 8 survivors of the Flyer escaped back home on board the submarine Redfin. 52 men were lost with Flyer. USS Harder, SS-257, disembarked on her 6th patrol of the war in company with 2 other submarines on 5 August 1944 to hunt Japanese shipping in the South China Sea off Luzon. In company with sister submarine Hake, the 2 subs had broken away from a wolf pack and were heading to patrol near Dassel Bay, when on 24 August around 4:55, contact was made with 2 Japanese escort ships, one of which was possibly the captured Clemens-class destroyer USS Stewart, who turned to attack. Hake reported having dove down and making evasive maneuvers to avoid colliding with both Harder and the oncoming Japanese ships. As Hake was diving into the depths around 7:25, the distant sounds of several underwater explosions to her stern could be heard, and it was assumed Harder had been depth-charged by the enemy warships. Hake was able to escape and return to the same area several hours later, hopping to re-establish contact with Harder, but the submarine and her crew of 60 men were never seen or heard from again. Japanese records examined post-war indicate the patrol ship PB-102, formerly the destroyer USS Stewart, ran into USS Harder, which prompted the escort vessel CD-22 to depth charge and sink Harder. USS Robelo, SS-273, headed out on her third patrol of the war from Fremantle, Australia, on 22 June 1944 to hunt Japanese shipping in the South China Sea. The submarine was scheduled to pass through the heavily mined Balabac Strait south of Palawan before heading to the Natuna Islands. On 2 July 1944, Robelo made a report of sighting a Japanese Fuso-class battleship with escorts, but the submarine was never seen or heard from again after this final message. The ship suffered an explosion in her after battery after hitting a mine, and 4 crew members survived. However, they were later murdered by Japanese guards in response to an Allied air strike on Palawan. USS Runner, SS-275, left Midway Island on 28 May 1943 for her third patrol of the war, heading towards the Japanese home islands of Hokkaido and the northern tip of Honshu for a month-long hunt. However, the submarine was never heard from again, and Japanese records studied post-war have been unable to determine the cause for the loss of Runner. The only discernible information available proposes that Runner had sunk a cargo ship on 11 June 1943 near Hokkaido and had been attacked by Japanese escort ships on 22 June 1943, but no oil slick or debris had been reported. A second cargo ship had exploded and sunk near the Kuril Islands on either 26 or 29 June. Records list both dates, but the Japanese listed the sinking as due to unknown causes. The most likely cause for the loss of the Runner is that she struck a mine and sank with all hands sometime after 22 June 1943. Her fate remains unsolved. USS Scamp, SS-277, left Midway Island on her 8th patrol of the war on 16 October 1944 to hunt Japanese shipping near the Bonin Islands. The submarine was ordered to change her patrol area north of Iwo Jima on 9 November, which she acknowledged. The submarine was then ordered to provide rescue services for downed B-29 bomber crews on their return trip back to the Marianas Islands. However, Scamp never responded to any transmissions again and never returned to port. A post-war evaluation of Japanese records could not conclusively determine on precisely which date Scamp was sunk. However, there are 3 incidents that were recorded as attacks on submarines near the vicinity of where Scamp was operating at the time. The most likely incident which caused the loss of Scamp occurred on 11 November 1944, just north of Iwo Jima, when a Japanese patrol plane led the escort ship CD-4 to a trail of oil, which was then heavily depth-charged until a larger slick appeared on the water. No other sub besides for Scamp should have been in the area. 2 other attacks on submarines were recorded by the Japanese in the area on 16 November, which were not reported by any American sub. However, it is unlikely these were made on Scamp if the submarine had been previously damaged as reported by the Japanese on 11 November. The cause for the loss of the Scamp and her 60-man crew remains unsolved. USS Scorpion, SS-278, topped off fuel at Midway Island on 3 January 1944, then headed out for her 4th patrol of the war. On 5 January, the sub reported a crewman had been injured with a broken foot and requested the friendly sub Herring nearby make the exchange. Afterwards, Scorpion departed to patrol the East China Sea and the Yellow Sea, from which the sub was not seen or heard from ever again. There are no records of attacks on American submarines in the area and time frame where Scorpion disappeared. However, it is known that the Japanese Coastal Navy had placed several lines of underwater mines near her assigned hunting grounds only days before the sub was scheduled to arrive. The Scorpion was declared lost on 6 March 1944 and has never been found. USS Snook, SS-279, headed out from Guam on 28 March 1945 for her ninth patrol of the war. The last known communication between Snook and friendly forces was on 8 April, after which the submarine and her crew disappeared and were never seen or heard from again. It is difficult to determine exactly when the submarine went missing, as there was a several-day period which the Snook was not required to acknowledge orders. It was determined the sub was missing after she failed to turn up to a downed pilot in her assigned location on 20 April 1945. Snook was probably sunk by the escort vessels Okinawa, CD-8, CD-32, and CD-52. In 1995, a possible wreck of a submarine was located off Iriamot Island at a depth over 1,000 feet by a group of deep-sea divers with sonar equipment, but whether or not it is the Snook has not been verified since. USS Tullibee, SS-284, was on her fifth patrol of the war near Palau Islands when on 25 March 1944 her crew sighted a Japanese convoy of 6 ships. After trailing the convoy for several hours, the Tullibee fired 2 torpedoes at a target and waited for the expected detonations. Unfortunately, one of the torpedoes malfunctioned and made a perfect turn around to hit Tullibee amidships in a violent explosion. Only a single man survived the sinking to be captured by the Japanese and held as a POW until the end of the war. USS Capelin, SS-289, left Darwin, Australia on 17 November 1943 for her second patrol of the war to hunt Japanese shipping around the Philippine Islands. On 9 deck, Capelin was seen by friendly submarine blowfish and acknowledged a message confirming her identity, but this would be the last time the submarine was ever seen or heard from again. Post-war analysis of Japanese records found that attacks on American submarines were reported in the areas where Capelin was assigned to operate. Recent research has suggested the Japanese laid lines of fresh mines out across areas where Capelin should have been operating at the time. The fate of Capelin remains unknown. USS Cisco, SS-290, set out for her first patrol of the war from Darwin, Australia on 20 September 1943, heading to hunt Japanese commerce shipping in the Sulu Sea. The submarine and her crew were never seen again. Post-war analysis of Japanese records conclude that on 28 September, an American submarine was repeatedly attacked by the gunboat Karatsu, formerly the USS Luzon, until a large oil slick and debris appeared on the ocean surface. Cisco was the only U.S. sub operating in the area at the time this report was made, leaving little doubt over her demise. Cisco took 80 crewmen down with her when she sank. USS Escalar, SS-294, set out on 18 September 1944 from Midway Island for her first patrol of the war. The sub was assigned to patrol the Yellow Sea and sink Japanese shipping. On 30 September, Escalar transmitted a partial message which indicated she had been engaged by an enemy gunboat. No other discernible information about this incident has been recorded. The last communication made with Escalar was when she sent a routine report detailing her course and position, after which the submarine and her crew were never seen or heard from again. When the sub failed to return from patrol by 27 November 1944, she was declared lost. Post-war analysis of Japanese records indicate an American submarine was attacked on 19 October 1944 by a Japanese escort which dropped 30 depth charges and observed a large oil slick and debris on the ocean surface. As the only U.S. submarine assigned to be operating in the area on that date, it is most likely Escalar was sunk by this attack. USS Tang, SS-306, left Midway Island on 24 September 1944 headed for the Formosa Strait. Tang declined an invitation to join a wolf pack of submarines patrolling off Formosa, modern-day Taiwan, and instead ventured to hunt alone. Neither the submarine or her crew were heard from again for the rest of the war. Post-war, it was revealed that Tang was preparing to head home after another highly successful patrol when on 24 October 1944, the crew sighted a Japanese convoy and fired their final torpedo, which immediately malfunctioned and circled back around. Despite their best efforts to evade, Tang was hit by her own torpedo and quickly began sinking. The sub settled on the sea floor in 180 feet of water, with 30 survivors crammed into the bow torpedo room, of which 13 were able to make it out of the sunken Tang to the surface. Later, on the 25th, a Japanese frigate picked up 9 survivors of the Tang's crew, including her commanding officer and 5 men who had swum to the surface after the initial sinking. A total of 78 men were lost with Tang. In her 5 patrols, she sank a record 33 ships. USS Shark, SS-218, was on her 3rd patrol of the war-hunting Japanese shipping near the Luzon Strait when on 24 October 1944, the Shark reported to nearby American they were preparing to attack an enemy freighter. This was to be the last message received from the submarine, as she was never seen or heard from again. Japanese records examined post-war revealed that Shark had most likely sunk the Hell ship, freighter she had been stalking Arisen Maru, which had been holding over 1,700 Allied POW, shortly after sending her last message. Japanese destroyer Harukaze came to assist the stricken freighter and attacked the submerged American sub until oil, bubbles, and debris came to the surface, leaving few doubts about the fate of the Shark and her 87 crewmen. USS Barble, SS-316, was on her 4th patrol of the war covering approaches to Balabac Strait with an attack group of 3 other submarines. On 3 February 1945, Barble sent out a message reporting to her nearby Wolfpack that she had been attacked on 3 occasions by Japanese submarine hunting aircraft. The submarine was never heard from again and was reported as lost by the Navy on 16 February 1945. An examination of Japanese records after the war discovered that a Japanese plane had made an attack on an American submarine with 2 bombs, with at least one hitting the conning tower. The submarine, most likely Barble, disappeared under the waves in flames and smoke. A slick of oil appeared as the sub went down, making almost certain that she did not survive. USS Bullhead, SS-332, was on her 3rd patrol of the war near Bali, when on 6 August 1945, the submarine reported she had made her way through the Lombok Strait en route to a rendezvous with a wolfpack in the Java Sea. However, by 15 August, Bullhead had not arrived at her scheduled position, nor was her crew responding to any attempts to communicate by her fellow submarines. On 24 August, the Navy reported Bullhead as missing and presumed lost. It is assumed that Bullhead was sunk by a Japanese anti-submarine plane on 6 August 1945, who reported sinking an Allied submarine after 2 direct bomb hits. If correct, it would make Bullhead possibly the last American ship sunk by enemy action in the Second World War. USS Gallet, SS-361, left Midway Island on 28 May 1944, heading out for waters off northern Honshu on her 3rd patrol of the war. The submarine was never seen or heard from again after leaving Midway, and was reported as presumed lost on 26 July 1944. Post-war analysis of Japanese records conclude that the most likely cause of Gallet's loss came on 14 June 1944, when the gunboat Miyamaru and auxiliary subchaser Bunzen Maru depth-charged an American submarine until a large slick of oil, debris, and cork floated to the surface. All 82 crewmen of the Gallet were lost with the sub. USS Keat, SS-369, had been sinking Japanese cargo freighters west of Takara Redo, when on 19 March 1945 she had been ordered to return to Midway Island to refuel, and then to Pearl Harbor for a refit, which the submarine acknowledged. The following day, the submarine sent a routine weather report and was never heard from again. The sub never arrived back at base, and repeated attempts to contact her crew went unanswered. By 16 April 1945, the Keat had been reported as missing by the Navy. Post-war analysis of Japanese records proved to be inconclusive, as there were no reports of attacks on U.S. submarines in the area, and the circumstances surrounding the loss of Mystery Keat has eluded history, although she may have struck a mine. It's sometimes said that the Japanese submarine Ro 41 sank Keat, but her records do not support this. USS Lagardo, SS-371, was on her ninth patrol of the war hunting a Japanese convoy in company with the submarine USS Bea, SS-318, in the Gulf of Thailand on 3 May 1945. The two submarine captains agreed to position themselves ahead of the convoy for a better attack angle after a brief gunfight with escorting vessels had driven the two subs away. The Bea arrived at her agreed-upon location, and after failing to reach the Lagardo for over a half-hour, decided to attack alone, which yielded no success. The Lagardo was never seen or heard from again. Post-war Japanese records revealed that during the same engagement with Bea, escorting Japanese minelayer Hatsutaka dropped depth charges on a submerged submarine, which most likely was the Lagarto.